Lots of clubs are running on a hand-to-mouth basis. The Premier League will be absolutely delighted. Some of the clubs in the EFL are so desperate for money, they might be effectively blackmailed.
The calling of a general election, as anybody could have told if they'd seen Tracy Crouch's face on Wednesday evening, it seemed to come as a surprise to her, and it wasn't a pleasant one for her because it has implications for the independent regulator bill.
That's right. Parliament has been prorogued from last Friday, and there's something called washing up as far as the parliamentary progress is concerned, and the creation of new legislation. But the football governance bill was not included in that, and I've got to be honest, I think the bills that were included ultimately are more important. There's things like what's happened in respect of post office and so on. So I think we have to acknowledge that those do take greater importance. That means that we've got a status of limbo. So I think Tracy was very measured in her comments, but clearly unhappy. I know the Football Supporters Association, they have been very active since the announcement. So they've been in contact with at least 100 fans-based organisations and so on to say to political parties, we're football fans. We also happen to be voters. So let's know what's happening as far as your manifesto commitments are concerned. The Premier League will be absolutely delighted with what has happened because they quasi-promised the EFL money in September 2023 as part of their New Deal, or whatever they choose to call it. That money has failed to materialise because there's been so much internal squabbling as far as the Premier League is concerned. So where do we go forwards? Certainly the noises coming out, I think, of the Labour Party is that they are going to have the regulator as part of their manifesto, and the rules could go further. So the Premier League might have egg on their face, sniggering away as they are at present. I would imagine the Conservative Party, given that it was ultimately driven by the former Prime Minister and Tracy Crouch with regards to the fan-led review, you would expect it to be part of their manifesto as well, because my view is that the regulator it's a vote winner until something goes wrong and the regulator can't do it, can't fix the situation, in which case it becomes a vote loser. And we're not there yet. So you can understand the frustration. I think there is a fear amongst some clubs, and I've been in contact with a few over the course of the last few days, is that they were hoping for relatively quick progress as far as the initial bill was concerned. Lots of clubs are, we know that they're running on a hand-to-mouth basis. The more jaundiced amongst them fear that the Premier League might see this as an opportunity to put forward what ultimately would be a bad deal for the EFL, but perhaps slightly better than the current deal. And the Premier League never does anything without strings being attached. We saw this with solidarity payments. At the same time, they threatened that unless there was a compliance with EPPP, solidarity payments would be taken away. So I think the fear is that the Premier League might actually decide to come up with a slightly better deal and say to the EFL, as part of the deal, you need to drop your support for the regulator, and we will give you more money now. Now, some of the clubs in the EFL are so desperate for money, they might be effectively blackmailed into that situation. So that was the reaction that I had from some of our contacts in the industry. I think the EFL board are saying, hold steady, we want to see this through, but they're not the ones who are actually physically got wage bills to pay at the end of each month.
So you imagine it would be part of the Labour Party manifesto, but the only thing is the timing then, how, what sort of priority it would be. So people out listening at home might be able to tell us with some more authority. But you're probably looking at least another season of football before we get an independent regulator, at least, I would have thought.
I would imagine that if there is a new party in charge, then they will have a list. You always talk about the first 100 days in charge, where you try to make your biggest mark, and to effectively roll over an old act, an old piece of legislation, as far as they're concerned, might not be at the top of the list of things to do. And then the elections in July. You've got the summer recess for Parliament. Things aren't going to get started before October. And I don't think the football regulator is going to be one of the first things they're going to try to do before the end of the calendar year.